Hello and welcome back to London, everybody. Welcome back to Fallout London, where today we're going to be taking a look at some explosive weapons. And I didn't really know how to quantify these weapons, so these are going to be a little bit disconnected, but today we're going to be going over the explosive Crude launcher. This is pretty much your main explosive weapon that you're going to be finding in Fallout London. It's pretty much like the missile launcher in Fallout 4. We don't really have anything like a Fat Man in this. Although you can still get missile launchers and Fat Man as drops, weirdly enough. But you can't really use the Fat Man because there are no mini nukes in London. As well as the missiles have been changed from missiles to shape charges. So even if you find something that would be pretty much the same, it would just count as that. And if you end up getting a legendary missile launcher, it will be converted from using missiles to shape charges. So you can still use those ones if you find them. On top of that, we're also going to be talking about the flare gun again, because this weapon can also be an explosive weapon, at least if you build it a certain way. So let's talk about the missile launcher first, and then we'll move on to the flare gun later. The launcher you can find on hooligans, raiders, mercenaries. It's not a really common weapon, but it's also not necessarily like a super rare weapon. You can still find these pretty regularly. On my playthrough, I don't think I really got many legendary versions of this. Funny enough, I think I actually got more legendary Fat Mans that I couldn't use on my runs rather than this. But this is probably going to be your go-to weapon if you are going with an explosive build, if you're just not throwing explosives normally, or you convert a weapon to use explosives. Like we've kind of talked about that with the Crude rifle being able to be converted to basically an explosive 50 cal, which is kind of cool. So for the stats, the Crude launcher does 825 damage per shot. It does a lot of damage, as you would kind of expect. It also has a pretty big AoE. It does have a weird animation bug, though, at least when you're using it with the semi-automatic barrel, which I don't know why it's called the semi-automatic barrel, because you can't get multiple shots with this. It's only a single shot, unless maybe you found an endless one or something, in which case I guess you could keep firing it. But when you go to reload it, you don't actually really reload anything. So it's a little bit strange there. This one has good DPS because it does a lot of damage and it can splash quite a bit. This has a 2 rate of fire. It doesn't shoot very quick, as you'd kind of expect. It does have a long reload on it. This one has 203 range, quite good. This one has 65 accuracy. It doesn't really matter too much to be accurate with the missile launch. You just have to hit close enough. This one does weigh a lot, though. This one weighs 24.5 weight, and it can get even heavier with mods. It goes all the way up to 30 weight at the highest, so it is going to weigh you down, as well as if you're playing on the survival mode, which I wouldn't really recommend for London because London's not the most stable. Then the missiles are also going to weigh 7 each, or the shape chargers are going to weigh 7 each, because I don't think that's changed at all between London and 4. This is, I think, the only thing that uses the shape charges, though, so that is kind of useful. And this has a magazine of 1. No matter how you build it, it always just has 1 shot. For the general pros of these weapons, big AoE, high damage, kind of what you'd expect from a missile launcher. Major cons are also kind of what you'd expect. Slow rate of fire and slow reload speed. The self-damage can kill you really easily at the start of the game, so you don't want to shoot this too close. And they are heavy. For an overall rating for the missile launcher, I'd probably say this one's like an A tier. I think it's actually pretty good. Even if you're not going with an explosives build, it's just really good to initiate fights with. And it can just be useful even if you're playing on the survival mode, you could just pick it up, load it, fire it into a couple of crowds, and then chuck it. You don't really need it after that point, so it's still going to be useful even in those situations. It does have some mods that you can put on it. The mods are a little bit interesting, so you can change the barrel. This is either the semi-auto barrel, which doesn't seem to matter. That's just the default barrel. Or you can go with the enhanced barrel, which gets you more damage, so you might as well go with that. You can change the sights. I put a scope on mine, and man, the sights are weird on this one. They're drawn on with a marker. So that's kind of funny. You could also go with better iron sights, because normally it doesn't actually have any iron sights. You just kind of look to the side of it and launch it, which is fine. So whatever sights you'd like on there. And then you can also put either a shield or a bayonet on this. Bayonet can be useful if you plan on going with an explosives only build. So at least then if enemies do run up, you can stab them. And melee enemies aren't going to be your bane of existence then if they get up close. The shield is useful, and that's why I put on mine, because that just gets you more explosive resistance, so you're less likely to blow yourself up. Although if you do have explosives expert maxed out, you're still going to do a lot of damage to yourself if nothing else, so you do have to be careful with that. I don't know if I would really change where this one's placed. I would still probably say it's an A tier weapon. I think it's pretty good overall. It's just very solid for pretty much any occasion, and probably going to be one of your go-tos in an explosive build, assuming you don't find something else that is a fully automatic explosive weapon that you can use. Which I guess you can with something like the MG42 that can go explosive, which is just kind of crazy. Now let's move over to the flare gun, which can be converted into quite a few different weapons actually, because normally it fires flares, and the flares aren't really that great. They do some damage when they hit, as well as they do damage when they explode, but the explosion takes a while to go off since it's a timed explosion. and it's just not very consistent about hitting anything, even very slow moving enemies. I guess if an enemy is completely incapacitated and can't move, it would probably be okay, but you can swap out what you're using in this. And for this, we're going to be taking a look at the high explosive shells that you can load into this, which still take shotgun shells, but they do count as explosive rounds. And this is actually pretty good. This is also with the Mastercraft receiver. The flare gun only has 2 mods that you can put on it, either the receiver or the ammunition that you're loading into it. I'd recommend you just load whatever ammunition you can in, depending on your gun nut skill or any other skills. For this case, you're going to need Demo Expert, and then just put the best receiver that you can on there. The Mastercraft receiver does the most damage, so we're going to be talking about the modified version of this. So set up like this, the flare gun actually does a lot of damage. It does 212 damage per shot. This also has pretty good damage per second, because even though this is a single shot, you're going to have to reload it after every single shot. It still reloads fairly quick. It's got 3 rate of fire, so it is a little bit faster than something like the Crude explosive launcher, and most guns in London don't reload super fast. This one has 77 range, which is quite long, and 74 accuracy, which is also quite good, especially considering this is a shotgun. It actually stays pretty consistent too. The spread is not as wide as you would kind of think it would be, although it still has splash damage on it too, so that is really nice. You do have to worry about using it at close range though, because it can hurt you too. This only weighs 3.1 weight, so it is very lightweight as well. And this does use shotgun shells, which makes it way more common of a round than something like the shape charges are for the missile launcher, or even some of the thrown explosives too that you can find around London, making it actually pretty good. This does only hold 1 shot though, so you have to keep that in mind. Overall, if you wanted to turn the flare gun into a grenade pistol, it's actually quite good. Weirdly enough, the flare pistol is really good in London. It's good as a shotgun, it's good as a grenade launcher. The only thing it kind of sucks at is being a flare gun, because the flare gun itself just is not a great weapon. But if you want to convert it, it's actually pretty good. And I would say this is another like A tier weapon. I think it's really good on an explosives build. And that'll do it for these 2 explosive weapons. We do have some other explosives too to talk about in London, but most of them are thrown explosives. There's not actually really a whole lot of shot explosives, at least that are specifically explosive weapons. Some of them, well, any of them can have explosive if you get the legendary effect, or if they have explosive ammunition, you can load into them too. Thank you guys so very much for watching this. Hope that you guys enjoyed it. I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.